Back in 2008, Sonic Team released their latest title in the series with Sonic Unleashed. However, much like many games of that era, it was torn apart by critics. Seemingly ashamed of the game, SEGA promptly did some cleanup and Unleashed, among many others, was left to die a slow death. However, Sonic fans thought otherwise, with many Dark Age era fans who grew up in that era loving the game for what it was. And 17 years later, that passion has led to a fully native PC recompilation of the original game for modders, with a whole new generation being able to experience the game. Since the game is getting so much coverage on social media, and because I'm a whore for views, subscribe! I decided to start a new Unleashed file for the first time since 2022 on my Series S, and see what I think of it. Do I love the game like many Sonic fans, or do I despise it with every fibre of my being? Without further ado, let's get into things. Stories in Sonic have been quite the divisive topic online as of late, with people expressing dissatisfaction over certain characters and the changes that have been made to them. Does Unleashed commit the cardinal sin of mischaracterizing our cast? Well, no. In fact, this may be one of the strongest stories in the series despite it being so simple. Not only is the presentation stellar, but the dialogue ain't too shabby either. You know, in the 2010s, characters barely felt like real people. They solely existed for the sake of getting to that next Sonic quip. In Unleashed, however, interactions come across so naturally, and the voice acting is a major part of it. Jason Griffith as Sonic, Amy Pallett as Tails, and Tony Scenario as Chip all do a stellar job with the line deliveries, and they breathe life into these characters in a beautiful way, with Jason Sonic being my personal favourite depiction of the Blue Hedgehog in the series. I won't get into a plot summary here for the sake of saving time, since so many people have already done it better than I can, but the vibe of the story is so refreshing after 06's more monotone take on storytelling. This game attempts to instead go for a more laid back vibe, where characters are designed as if they were in a Pixar movie. Gone are the days of stiff, underwhelming cutscenes. We're in a new age of Sonic, and it looks beautiful. With this new direction Sonic Team were heading in, they wanted a fresh take on Sonic's core gameplay to go along with it, and the adventure formula was folded to the wayside in favour of a more thrilling experience. As we all know, the adventure formula died with Sonic 06. In its place, we got a gameplay style that would define the next 17 years of the Blue Blur, the boost formula. By holding down the button where you've got some ring energy, Sonic gains instant access to speeds previously thought to be unattainable in this series, with a DBZ-esque aura enveloping Sonic. In this state, he's invincible to anything that isn't a projectile, spikes, or bottomless pits. Like most things in this franchise, the boost style of gameplay is one that's proven to be divisive over the years. After all, Sonic was built momentum-based platforming, which rewarded skilled players with speed a casual simply couldn't attain. Here on the other hand, speed is something that's pretty much given to you, with momentum-based gameplay taking a backseat to the thrill of going fast. However, I'd argue that this style of gameplay suits Sonic just as much, if not more, than the adventure games in a linear format. Allow me to explain. Although Adventure 1 and 2 had really fun controls for Sonic, they came with a few caveats. For Adventure, the busted spin dash meant you could break a lot of levels in half, with not enough effort required from the player to make it satisfying. In the case of its sequel, it tried to incorporate more linear, action-packed levels. However, it did so with a Sonic that was more suited to open spaces with linear hallways. As such, there was kind of a disconnect between the level design and the way Sonic handled in my opinion. Sonic Unleashed marked the first time a control scheme had been developed for fully linear stages, allowing the developers to design said stages around Sonic's primary abilities. And while the boost style does kind of deviate from the earned speed shtick the franchise is known for, it's not mindless. Quite the opposite in fact. Unlike previous games, the challenge is maintaining your speed. Whether it's sliding under a tight space to keep your speed, hopping over bumps in the road, quick stepping to change lanes, or drifting around corners, there's always something happening on screen that keeps you engaged, which I appreciate. It also helps that there's rarely any dull moments, compared to SA2's more stop and go nature. In a game focused on maintaining your speed, this control scheme works wonders. Now, it's not perfect. The drift can feel wildly inaccurate due to the wide arc of the maneuver. Controlling Sonic when things get slower can frustrate you with how imprecise it is, and they decided to map both the boost and homing attack to the same button, which means you can't air dash with any sort of boost in your meter. On the whole though, this was a damn fine first attempt at this formula, and a great way to make the transition to 7th generation consoles. However, this is only half of the experience, because when the sun fades away, the Werehog comes out to play. In an attempt to pad out game time, Sonic Team came up with a brand new gameplay style, and it does its job quite well in that regard. Unlike his daytime counterpart, Sonic the Werehog isn't fast in the slightest, as this style is more akin to beat 'em up with platforming elements. And although this style has many flaws, I still enjoy portions of the gameplay, most notably the combat. Unleashed kinda has an RPG system going for it where you gain XP from killing enemies, and can upgrade your abilities after each level. And although your kit is painfully bare at the start of the game, it genuinely feels great to string together combos and kill the Dark Gaia creatures after leveling up enough. My only real complaint here is I wish that the game incentivized you to dodge roll more, as it's something that's criminally underutilized throughout the game. Maybe something akin to Witch Time and Bayonetta would do the trick? Some of these moves also affect how the Werehog moves, meaning you can think outside the box at times and potentially skip annoying sections of gameplay, which I always enjoy. Unfortunately, that's where the positives end for me, as the biggest issue of these stages, besides the other thing we'll get into later, is the platforming. There's absolutely zero grace to the way Werehog moves while jumping or swinging, and it absolutely kills the flow of the game. I also don't think the Werehog's stretchy limbs were taken full advantage of either. Imagine if the Werehog controlled similar to Spider-Man in his recent games. It would provide the combat angle the game was trying to go for while giving the player thrills similar to the day stages. At the end of the day, I guess what's here works well enough, it just feels underwhelming given what could have been. In addition to that, the camera can also be pretty stubborn on occasion, with stages like Eggman and Chun Nan getting the worst of it. The amount of times I died to this jump had me fuming. Finally, the enemy variety isn't that great, which is a real bummer. Despite having quite the choice when it comes to combos, just about every enemy you face can be defeated in a similar fashion. As a result, my strategies for taking down these guys never really changes, making a lot of battles feel rather samey, which is again an unfortunate consequence of the limited enemy pool. However, I can genuinely enjoy the Werehog levels at points despite its lows infuriating me. If that were all Unleashed had to offer, I might have given it an S tier. Unfortunately, there's a couple of glaring issues that, to me at least, drag down the whole adventure by quite a bit. Oh boy, where do I begin? Medals are used in this game as a means of progression, and the game will not hesitate to remind you when you fall short whether you like it or not. In order to complete the game, you need 80 moon medals and 120 sun medals. Now, the moon medal requirement isn't so bad as I never really had to backtrack for one of them. It's the goddamn sun medals that make me lose every ounce of my sanity near the end of a game. It's so crushing when you run up to a gate only for it to say, go collect more shit! And this leads into my biggest problem with the medal system, how much it works against the two different playstyles in the game. Every Werehog stage on a fresh playthrough takes forever because of the need to scour for medals. Combined with the issues I mentioned earlier, and the fact that some of these layouts are fucking infuriating, do not be surprised if these levels take you 20 to 25 minutes to complete. As for Daytime Sonic, they decided to put these medals in the most unintuitive positions imaginable, making you play the game in a way it clearly wasn't designed for. This is where the issue of Sonic not being great to handle at low speeds comes into play, as it can be so awkward to slow down for the sake of collecting a singular medal. These are scavenger hunts of the highest degree, whether you're playing as Hedgehog or Werehog, and it brings the overall pace of the game to a fucking crawl as you approach the end. Much like Sonic Adventure and Sonic 06, Unleashed decides to give us hub worlds where the player can bask in the beautiful looking environments of each country. And while these are certainly well made, with civilians who have their own little personality quirks and stories to tell, I'm just not really a fan of hubs in my Sonic game. I'm of the unpopular opinion that a stage to stage approach just fits better for this series. If they absolutely have to be in these games though, I'm rather satisfied with how these hub worlds came out. My big issue with these, however, is the fact that you have to visit Professor Pickles so many times during the campaign, even when it makes little to no sense. It just makes for a lot of unnecessary backtracking through Spagonia/Shamar just to get to him, and it serves as a pacemaker throughout the adventure. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but these trips add up across the adventure and leave me baffled as to why they were included in the first place. Twice in your adventure, you will need to fly to a different continent via this tornado minigame, reminiscent of the one in Sonic Adventure. Unlike that, however, you are on rails here, unable to move even in the face of obvious danger. In order to survive, you must press the appropriate button that hovers above Eggman's many mechs to destroy them. In other words, you have to do nothing but hit the appropriate button for 5 whole minutes each and every single time. And because they just love to bombard your screen with 10 different inputs simultaneously, and because I'm someone who grew up in Nintendo button layouts, these were unbelievably painful to get through. The last one in particular can go fuck itself. The ungodly amount of inputs you have to process combined with an awful camera angle that leaves you with very little reaction time and had me nearly break my controller in half when I was down to the last hit and died, making me redo the entire stage just for another attempt at the goddamn boss. Seriously, would it have hurt to add a checkpoint when reaching Eggman? While this boss is really cool from a narrative standpoint, as Light Gaia and Supersonic fight the embodiment of destruction that is Dark Gaia, it's such a drag to beat as every phase takes forever to beat, and the final Supersonic confrontation has some of the most despicable camera angles in the game. The only saving graces to the whole experience are the Sonic sections, which I find exhilarating as always, and the phenomenal soundtrack, which sets the mood perfectly. Other than those though, one of my least favourite bosses in the series. Hell, I take time eater with this in a gameplay sense. Go check out my video on Sonic bosses. But all this begs the question, do I like Sonic Unleashed as a whole? Well, yes. In spite of some terrible design choices, I've come to appreciate a lot of what Unleashed has to offer with this revisit. And although not my preferred Sonic gameplay style, I've nevertheless come to appreciate the Werehog for the fresh take on gameplay it provided to the franchise. Back in the day, this was a game I'd only come back to for daytime Sonic stuff, as that's what I enjoyed more. However, recently I found myself playing quite a few Werehog stages from time to time just to bask in the combat, which is something I never saw myself doing when I first completed it. In a lot of ways, this game reminds me of why I like Sonic. It oozes personality, has a fantastic soundtrack, and has a charm to it that makes you forget all the bullshit you went through in the latter half. With the Unleashed recompiled project officially out, I'd highly recommend you all check it out for yourselves and see if your opinion differs from mine. With all that though, I thank you for watching if you made it this far. As always, have a good evening, and I'll see you with a game that's dear to my heart next week.
What goes up must come down. Yeah, my feet don't touch the ground.